Hello everyone and welcome yourselves back to the channel. We are here with episode 2 of Adam, Ronnie and Zippy. Myself being Adam and my co-host Ronnie LeDrew. How are you, Ronnie?
Hi, I'm fine, Adam. Very good.
Thank you. Welcome back as always. And today we're going to be touching on Ronnie's filmography. He has quite the collection of films he's been involved with. Basically, to go film by film, Ronnie's going to talk about a bit of his experience on each of those films. And I think we have about seven to touch upon. There might be more out of that, but maybe we'll do that in a future episode. So, Ronnie, obviously, first off, how did film roles come your way? Obviously, I know you're into puppetry, you've done Rainbow. Just a bit of insight of how you got into films.
Okay, well, basically, as you say, I've been doing Rainbow for a few years. I suppose I was getting to be well known as a puppeteer on that particular program.
Mm.
And the time, I'm trying to remember when Labyrinth was filmed. I think it was in the 80s, but I haven't got the date of when it started. But anyway, there was an audition. I can't remember where I read it. It might have been in the stage or something. Jim Henson's company auditioning for extra puppeteers, additional puppeteers for the film Labyrinth. And I thought, wow. And it just turned out that it was in the summer break between Rainbow and the next series starting in the autumn. I
Okay.
thought, couldn't be better.
Yeah.
And so I went along, and Jim had a lovely house, which I think he's got a blue plaque on now, actually. Jim Henson's house where he lived in when he lived
Oh,
in
wow.
England for a
Yeah.
while. Um, and it was in Hampstead. And along from the lovely posh house he had, there was a church hall, and that's where the auditions were held. So at a church hall in Hampstead. And I went along, and I thought there'd probably be about 10 or 12 puppeteers. There was about 10 people that I knew. And then on the other side, there was another 20 young
Oh.
puppeteers who loved the Muppets and wanted to get involved in it as well.
Mm.
So that was quite interesting. I thought, oh my goodness. Now, I know it seems daft, but I didn't really have an audition up until that moment. I got my work, jobs just came on, I suppose because I was in the theatre. And somebody said, oh, Ronnie, are you free in the summer? I'd like you to work with the Hogarth puppets, with Muffin the Mule or something. Or would you do this? Would you do that? And that's how it all happened. Well, this time, of course, they didn't know me from Adam, the Henson Company.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went along, and they said, well, what you do is you'll either do a 5 minute piece that you've made up for yourselves, and we'll watch it and we'll film it and we'll decide, whether we think you're the right sort of person for joining us on this film.
Yeah.
Or you can do a improv sort of piece. And so I decided I'd do an improv piece, improvisation with a beaver puppet, which I haven't got him here at the moment. And it was like a Muppet type character, but of course, because it was a beaver, I gave him a sort of fake American Canadian voice. I went, oh, hi there, I'm the beaver. This is the beaver in the nude, by the way.
Yeah.
And and I thought, and I never thought, it wasn't until much later, I thought, I wonder whether they're going to think I'm sending them all up with this terrible American accent I'm doing. But anyway, I didn't think that. Luckily, I was too nervous. And I started doing stuff. He would wipe his fur, and then he would do his back, and then he'd
Yeah.
cough. And he was just doing silly things like that. And then what they did with the improv stuff, they other puppeteers, Muppeteers, as it were, would come
Yeah.
up and talk with their puppets, and I say, "Oh yeah, lovely to see you," and so I was, chatting to them. Goodness knows what I said, I can't remember. And anyway, I did that for a few minutes, and then they said, "Well, don't call us, we'll call you." The classic line.
Yeah.
So I remember leaving the church hall, and I literally, because I felt so anxious, that I sort of screamed down the out down the road. I don't know if anybody saw me. They probably thought, oh, blimey, what's wrong with him? But anyway, that was that. But luckily, in those days, I think I got a letter or a phone call. I really can't remember. Anyway, saying we'd like to use you for, additional puppeteers on Labyrinth. So that's what I did. And I remember it was filmed in Elstree Studios. And gosh, I'd done a little bit of film work, but not anything so massive as Labyrinth was, and
Yeah.
certainly not one that just had puppets and the main star, David Bowie, of course, and Jennifer Connelly. I mean, it was amazing. Anyway, I got there, and Jim obviously was still alive during that time, and he
Yeah.
said, "Well, um, you're all." He lined us up against a wall or something. Sounds like he's going to machine gun us. It wasn't quite that. And said, "Look, now all you lot, wonderful to have you, but please don't expect that you'll have big close-ups with your puppets. I think you are the background artist in we were doing the song, the Babe song. This
Oh
is
yeah.
chucking little Toby up in the air and all that sort of stuff. And so that's what I did. I haven't got very many pictures, but I have, because we weren't really allowed to take any. But that's me with one of the goblins,
Oh, cool.
and then turning over. That's me sitting. This was a
The
lunchtime.
Goblin chair.
A
Goblin
goblin
King
chair.
chair. Yeah.
That's right. So it was. It's me sitting, and I've got a little one there, a little goblin there, slightly smaller. But we were putting our goblins through holes in the set. I was at the back,
Oh
so
right.
we weren't always in the picture. So if David Bowie was singing around and moved along, sometimes we'd see it. But we always sang, the chorus. Well, we
Yeah.
didn't, but it was all pre-recorded. But we lips sung to it all, and we did that over a few days. I think, I can't remember. It was a few days of, because there was so many different shots and
Yeah.
stuff going on, and like the long shots when David threw up the baby in the air and he caught him again. It was a doll, whereas the close-ups were little baby Toby, who was Brian Froud's and Wendy Froud's little baby, and
Oh
they were
wow.
quite close on set to make sure that baby, and he seemed to be fine.
Yeah.
I suppose his parents were used drawing goblins and stuff like, so maybe used to seeing these rather strange things. But he was only young. I think he was only about 9 months or something.
Oh wow.
But he was very sweet. And anyway, that was terribly exciting. And then we did battles in the Goblin Village, which was a massive set with all these little houses, and we looked through windows. And
That
then
where the boulders come down and stuff.
that's right, they came down
Yeah.
the street and crashed people.
Yeah.
And I mean, oh, it was wonderful. There was a moment where I did one where one flew across the thing and his little legs wiggled. He landed in a wall. Can't remember what got.
Oh yeah, he
And
gets
I did
pushed.
his
He
kicking
like
legs.
jumps in or he gets pushed in or
Yeah,
something.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those. I'm trying to remember all the different bits because we all did different bits. But then
Yeah.
we were against a wall, loads of us, and we're all fighting stuff, waving our spears and our
Yeah.
whatever it was around. But it was terribly exciting. It was wonderful. And everybody, it was lovely. I mean, we didn't really have much to do with Jim Henson or David Bowie for that matter, because they were busy. He was filming most of the
Yeah, of
stuff.
course. Yeah.
But we did meet David Bowie at one lunchtime. We were all, in fact, I think it was the time we were taking these pictures.
Oh right.
And so, which we shouldn't really have done. But of course, in those days, you didn't have mobile phones. We had Kodak Instamatic cameras. So you had to wait a week to see whether the pictures came out from the chemist, all that sort of
Oh
thing.
wow.
Anyway, David Bowie walked in with a dressing gown on because he'd been filming, with the cost, and said, "You all right, guys?" or something like that. We went, "Yes, thank you." And he was really lovely. And and what was interesting too for me was the fact that when sadly he passed away a few years ago, the sort of documentaries about his life, there wasn't one person who didn't say that he was really a nice guy and really fun to work with.
Yeah.
And I thought that's great for a mega star like himself,
Yeah.
and a very bright, very intelligent man, as well as being a brilliant musician and singer and all the rest of
Yeah.
it,
An
actor,
actor.
mime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing. And Jennifer Connelly, she was lovely as well. She was really sweet, very young in those days. She was,
She's
I
in the
think she was
20s.
four, I think she was younger. I think she
Oh
was
really?
about 15 or something like
Oh
that,
wow.
14 or 15, very young. But I think she'd done a few commercials before that. And then that was
Oh.
her first sort of big film. And she was lovely, really lovely.
She was amazing. Yeah, they were both amazing in it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's interesting when it came out. It didn't do terribly well in the box office. I think it was a bit before its time in a sense that I think Jim Henson's name was associated with Muppets and comedy and that. And when these sort of
Yeah.
strange creatures and goblins and stuff, they thought, "What's all this about?" It was the same, similar, pardon me, pattern with Dark Crystal, which was the
Yeah.
film they made just before Labyrinth, and that again didn't really come to its own until it was put out on well, in those days, VHS
Yeah.
tapes, and same with Labyrinth, and then it suddenly took off, and now they're both very much cult movies. So
Oh God, yeah.
yeah, I'm just looking up to see what my next film. I think the next one, which happened, was Little Shop of Horrors, which was
Oh yeah.
wonderful, directed by Frank Oz. And I remember going up, I had to audition again for that. I didn't have as much time on that film because I had to leave a bit early because Rainbow Series, they overran their filming. And that was filmed in Pinewood Studios, the
Oh
home
right.
of the Carry Ons and the home of James Bond and all that. So it was wonderful.
Oh
You know,
wow.
it's a wonderful history at Pinewood
Yeah.
Studios. Um, anyway, so I was. Oops, sorry, I'm dropping stuff. Oh dear, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you
Oh
see?
wow.
There's the
Yeah.
big plant. Oops, excuse me, I'm dropping stuff on my knee. That's the big plant, and underneath, oh, you can't really see the vines there. Oh, actually, I've got it upside down. Sorry, that's better. But there were sort of vines coming out. There's one over there,
Oh yeah.
and we when we were doing the songs and stuff, we were working those sort of, and they'd wrap round Audrey and pull her into the thing. There was several shots with them, and I had about a week of, or maybe not quite a week, but a few days of learning how to work this vine. I had a single vine, and it was basically like, the only way I can describe it was like a signal box, you know, that where you pull a lever and the signal on a railway station.
Oh yeah.
Those
Yeah.
old, well, it was like that, and you did that, and you can move it around a bit, and it sort of moved around.
Ah,
And
okay.
so I did that while they were doing other things. And then gradually I was moved in. There was a load of us all underneath the set. There are pictures on, I think on YouTube you can see. I don't have any pictures there, but I think there's a making of as well. You might be able to see that. But anyway, you can see a whole load of puppeteers working these sort of levers to
Yeah.
do. Brian Henson was actually working the big plant, working the main movement, but the lips and things were all animatronic, you know, worked by people with
Remote controls.
yeah,
Yeah.
and same, and they had a person doing the tongue as well in the plant. But talking about Little Shop, it was lovely to do. Frank Oz was wonderful. He sometimes came down in the lunch hour and played table tennis
Oh
with
really?
everyone. I mean, you know, wonderful. But also, I thought it was a fantastic film to see. I loved it.
Mm.
You know, when we saw the crew showing, I think it was in Marble Arch or somewhere like that. And it was fascinating to see, you know, the way they put it all together. Um, the girls, the three black girls who were the sort of narrators who would walk across the scenes,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
wonderful singers.
Yeah.
And Audrey, she was wonderful. Audrey too. Forgotten her name. It's dreadful, but anyway, she was wonderful. She had a wonderful blonde wig on. We had to be careful not to knock it because she had that dark hair.
Oh, with all the vines and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lovely moment in the little shop where I was given um, the thing. Well, I suppose it was a special treat really to work Mushnik's legs, and there again they were on sort of levers, and somebody was pulling the whole thing, and there was the big plant, and they cut to Rick, who was playing the young lad in the film,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then they'd cut back to him and his leg. He'd already fallen into the plant, and you see his legs kicking,
Oh.
and then he's drawn into the plant, munch, munch, munch. And I was doing his kicking legs. That was quite a fun bit. One of the horrible bits I did was I had to take out bits of body parts that the plant had eaten. I think that it wasn't in the film, but I was just clearing
Yeah.
stage management. Ugh. But sadly, just recently, the puppeteer who constructed the plants and did quite a lot on things like Dark Crystal was a man called Lyle Conway, and he sadly passed away in literally a few weeks ago,
Oh wow.
which was very sad. So he's no longer with us, but he was a brilliant, maker. He had a team of people helping, but he was the original. He did the concepts and the designs and stuff, and it was
Yeah.
fantastic. But I had another nice bit with with one of the I would call them the vines that came out of the bottom. This was a smaller one, and there's a bit towards the end of the film where the plant decides to phone Audrey too, who's in a flat across the way from the shop, and one of the vines puts, is it 10 cents into a
Yeah,
phone,
yeah.
and then my vine comes up and does brr, brr, and dials the phone, which is lovely. I know they're tiny bits, but it was great to have done it.
Yeah, little
And
different things that you wouldn't normally do, like on the set of Rainbow, for example.
oh, absolutely, totally
Yeah,
different, all very different.
yeah.
And that was lovely to do, and it was nice to be asked to do that. So that's Little Shop. Um, I'm trying to think. After that, I'm afraid I don't have photographs, but again, you can see them. The next film I did was Muppet Christmas Carol with Michael Caine, and that was just a joy. That was again shot. I think that was shot in now where was that? Yes, it was in I'm going to say Surbiton. I don't mean it. I mean oh, Ronald. Sorry, I can't remember the name of the studios. Very famous studios. It'll come to me when I talk about it, I'm sure. But and that was lovely. I did all sorts of different Muppet, obviously more Muppet type
Yeah.
characters. But the scene I always remember was we were doing a scene with Michael Caine had changed over a new leaf, and he brought this turkey to
Oh,
the
yeah.
Cratchit family, and he placed it on the table. And then the camera pulled back, and there were all these friends of the Cratchit family watching and looking. And I was doing some of those, and there were different shots
Oh,
they did.
right. Yeah.
And I remember Michael Caine, because he was up on a rostra. You wouldn't know that. We were down there, standing up working the
Yeah.
puppet. And he'd look down, as he was sitting at the head of the table and say, "You all right, guys?" And we'd say, "Yeah, we're fine, thank you." And he was really lovely guy. And he said, "I never look at you lot, just look at the puppets. You're brilliant, you lot." And he was really nice. And of course, it's one of his favourite parts. He loved it. He did Scrooge as a straight person. He said, "I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do it as a joke. The Muppets can do all the comedy. I'm going to be Scrooge, and I'm going to be evil and horrible." And he did it brilliantly. I mean, it was
Oh,
wonderful.
it's
You
one of
know.
the best Christmas Carol stories I think there is. Like
Oh, I
both
agree.
versions of it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's played so many times with families bring it out at Christmas, don't they? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I did with my lot.
Yeah.
It's lovely. Um, and anyway, that was that one. Excuse me. I then did. Sounds though I did a film every year. There were breaks in between these films because Rainbow came in the way. The next one I did, just looking to see whether I got pictures of it. Oh, was Muppet Treasure Island,
Oh, yeah.
which was the next one. We did that at Elstree. We did it. The other one we did in Shepperton, by the way. Sorry,
Right.
I just remembered studios. This I think we did. Was it at Elstree Muppet Treasure Island? It might have been at Shepperton, actually. Do you know? I can't remember. You'd have to look it up on Google it or something because I do
Yeah.
get things wrong. I've been done so many, I can't remember whether. No, I'm being very nice.
Ronnie's a busy man. Okay.
Yeah, I just can't remember. Senior moments.
Yes. Let him
But
off.
but no, it was really lovely. That one again had an incredible boat that they built on the studio on sort of rockers, and it sort of went up and down, and you could we're in the boat while they were sailing away, type thing. I mean, it was all very
Oh,
cleverly
yeah.
done, and we did all sorts. I did some Rizzo's friends. Rizzo was the rat, and
Yeah.
going off on holiday, which was quite fun. We did. I did some Muppet pirates, jumping off the boat because they were. I don't know whether the boat was sinking. I can't remember, but they asked me to do it because they knew that I could do string puppets. So we strung some nylon, I think it was, on these, and we did that. I did a puppet. I did some eyes for people. I think I did a Kermit arm at one point, which
Oh,
was
wow.
nice. Yes, and Steve Whitmire was doing Kermit in those days. But yeah, no, it was that again was a lovely film to work on. We had lots of fun. We all got to know each other really well, all the additional puppeteers, and
Mm.
Louise Gold was on that. So we used to go out and have lunch and all sorts. It was lovely.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the canteen originally wasn't terribly nice, so we'd sometimes go out to a pub, which wasn't too far away, and the pub meals were a bit nicer. But we had lots of hanging around. With films, you have lots of hanging around if you're not the star of the film.
Yeah.
But you got used to it all. It wasn't too bad. But yeah, it was a delightful film. And again, I think that came off very well, as Muppet Christmas Carol did. And Muppet Christmas Carol, of course, was Brian's first film after Jim had died. So it was quite a big thing for him. And I know Frank Oz was around and said, "You must do it. You must do it. You've got the talent,"
Yeah.
which I thought was very nice. And he was there to, and lots of people helped him, but it was a lovely film.
Oh,
And
great.
Treasure Island was
Yeah.
great. There was some wonderful scenes in that. And Tim Curry was the main pirate, amazing,
Yeah.
wonderful voice. And loads of English character actors were in scenes. Oh, lots of them. Really, the list is too long to mention, but it was wonderful to see. Now, after Muppet Treasure Island, I'm trying to think what came next. I think I think Dark Crystal comes in. Age of Resistance. I might got all this wrong, but and that was a picture. Oh, it's a bit blurry. This one with me with the Skeksis there at the table with all their food.
Oh, yeah.
That was actually an exhibition of them we had at the BFI when the film was being shown at one point. And then I was doing I was well known for my marriage. Sorry, I'm trying to get it so you can see the lovely picture.
Yeah.
But anyway,
That's
well,
fine.
that's better.
That's
That's
fine. Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
There you are. That's one of the podlings, and I had a marionette one, and I was dancing because he showed his feet dancing, and then they cut away to it was like a big cave, and all the rest of them were just like Muppet ones. But that was lovely, and Louis, the director, was actually, he had Steadicam, and he was filmed that shot. He wanted to do that. He was lovely. It was a wonderful time to do that. And what was lovely about that was that I went into the workshop, and obviously the Frouds, that was Brian and Toby and Wendy and the whole team were there, and they constructed the marionette version of the Podling, which was lovely. I brought my marionette in to show them, and I said I need a slightly bigger control because the puppet's a lot bigger, and I had music, the song playing in earphone there and stuff like that. But I was on a bit of a wobbly thing up high
Oh,
doing,
okay.
but it was wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. So that was that. I don't have very many pictures. The next one, I hope I've got this in the right order, was Tom Hanks's version of Pinocchio, and that's me in Tom Hanks's, well, not his costume, but a costume made for me because I basically was his body double for the first scene
Oh,
with him
wow.
in the workshop, and I had to replicate his walking, and when he took the puppet down, he'd made the Pinocchio figure, he put it down onto the floor, and he was working it, and then they cut
Wait,
to,
so
it was me working the puppet.
that's you at the start of the film.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Doing the when he's finished, I think he puts a feather in the hat, and then he
Yeah.
says, "Let's see how it works," and he takes it down, and that's me. You wouldn't know because of the way they cut it so
That's so
clever.
cool, though. Wow.
And so that was great fun to do, and I was there. Actually, I was on that film for about 2 or 3 months. It was fantastic. I was crew first of all, which meant I used to string some of the puppets that were in the background, just
Mm.
hanging up. And I also taught. There was a young actress, very young actually. She was lovely, and she was the ballerina puppet. She worked the ballerina puppet in Stromboli's sort of puppet show where Pinocchio joins the
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
And they felt that they needed more female characters. The only female character in the cartoon was the Blue Fairy, so they thought we must have a bit more. So they had this actress, and she'd hurt her leg. She'd got some sort of bit, I don't know, it wasn't polio, but it was something. She got this
Yeah.
contraction on the leg, and so she was doing the puppet. So I taught her how to hold the control and work the puppet. Although,
Ah,
again, her actual puppetry was all CGI'd, which was a shame. But anyway, it was great for me. I had a long time, and it was we filmed it in, an airship hangar originally. They made airships there,
oh, wow.
and it was somewhere, and I've forgotten where no, I can't remember the name of where it was because I had a car. I mean, it was very, very nice. I had a car to take me from my house all the way to this film studios in the morning. And then I'd get there and there'd be, because it was shortly after COVID, we'd have to have COVID tests and things. So I had a temperature check before they opened the gates of the studios. And then that was fine. And then I went in and you had a COVID jab or COVID, they put
Yeah, the
stuff, it's
swab
horrible,
and all that
all that
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
So we did that. And if there was any sign of COVID, you're out. You're not in there, obviously. And luckily there wasn't.
Yeah.
Um, and so then I'd go into the props room and I'd sort of be doing bits, and I got to know everybody really well, which was lovely. The choreographer who was choreographing the kids in the film, and
Yeah.
also the conductor for the music and all that. It was lovely. It was wonderful, and obviously when um, Mr. Hanks arrived, Tom arrived. We had the puppet ready for him, the Pinocchio puppet, and we were originally going to go to his trailer, but in fact he came to our props room, so we had to quickly tidy up everything, make it look nice. And again, we weren't allowed to have very many people, um, there because of getting COVID restrictions and stuff.
Yeah.
But so he came in with the mind, and maybe the director, I really can't remember, and it was lovely. And I, showed him the puppet, and he had a go, and it was all a bit all over the place. He said, "Well, thank God you're doing that." And he was lovely. And he said, "So how long have you been doing puppetry?" And I said, "Oh, quite a long time, but I've actually got a book." And so I was selling my books at the time, and I said, they're only, £10. And I mean, it was like ridiculous. Anyway, he was very kind and didn't mind. And when the people in the back went, "Oh my God, you don't tell the big star, try and sell your book to a big star." Anyway, that was quite funny, but he was
That's
really nice.
brilliant.
So that was quite a fun time. But
Oh, wow.
it was lovely filming it. I mean, I was a little bit disappointed with the film in the end. Um, it I don't know. At the very end, I wanted to see him turn into a boy more, and he
Hmm.
was very distant. And I missed it the first time I saw it because it was only on Disney Plus, so I didn't.
Yeah.
I only had it for a month, so I didn't see it for. But I remember thinking, oh, because that was the big moment that he. But and of course the CGI. Actually, they did the CGI pretty well, to be honest, and they were very nice. The CGI director, second unit director, I mean, don't think they called him second unit in those days, but he was lovely,
Yeah.
and the costume lady was great fun. Well, I had a bit of a go with her at the beginning with a puppet costume for Pinocchio because I said I'm going to have to put holes through the hat to put the strings on. She went, "Oh, can't do that, ruin my lovely costume." And I said, "Well, it's a puppet. It's got to be worked, and it's worked by strings. So sorry," and all that, which was quite funny. I think she was showing off at the time. She was showing off to her millions who were around. She was the
Yeah.
main lady. Sort of, I think. I don't know whether she was Oscar nominated for costumes, but she was quite high up.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, it didn't matter. She actually we became friends in the end, so it's fine. But anyway, so that was that. Then shortly afterwards, I went to do a film called Shakespeare's Shav, and that was a film for telly. And there's Shakespeare there,
Oh,
and
wow.
George Bernard Shaw there, and it was a play written. I had to go to Dublin. I've never been to Dublin before, and it was lovely. Um, and it was a smaller group of people, but it was beautifully filmed, and it was a play written by George Bernard Shaw, his last play that he wrote, and I think he died in 1951 or something. He was in his 90s, bless him. So I think it was 1950 they did the original production with the Lanchester puppeteers, Warder and Muriel, and they lived at that time in Malvern, and they had a small puppet theatre. And I think JBS, came along to see the show, and they had 78 records of a recording of the dialogue, which was quite fun. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
basically the two of them. There was Shaw saying, "Oh, I don't know why you're so famous, Mr. Shakespeare. I've just done as many lovely plays as you have." And Shaw said, "Well," Shakespeare said, "Well, I've been around a long time." And it was a sort of satire between the two of them.
Yeah.
And they had a boxing match at one point, which was lovely to do. And then we had they did there's this wonderful Sicilian marionettes, which we had a little cardboard set where they pretended to do the puppets, and that was fun.
Oh
And it was
well.
a lovely film. Sadly, it's not been shown in this country yet. Hopefully,
Okay.
the BBC will put it out. The Irish television, who put a lot of money into it, said you can't show it for a year, and so all last year we weren't allowed to see it. And I've seen it twice now, but it was shown at the Shaw Society. In fact, for them in Soho when it in the first year. But I also saw it last summer. It was at Shaw's house in the countryside where
Right.
he lived, and that was lovely. And they had a showing of it there, which was nice. So I've seen it twice, and it is. I'm actually quite pleased with it. It looked lovely.
Oh, good. That's
So
the main
that
thing.
was
Yeah.
very nice. Um, and finally, sorry, there was a film called A Quiet Place Day One,
Oh, yes.
and that was me. I was actually an actor in it. I think I was called Mervyn or something like that. And I was this old puppeteer who came on in the so-called Chinese theatre in New York, and the star of the film, and she was sadly suffering from cancer, and she had sort of things on her arm to help her get through the day. Something she was in. It was like a hospice she was in. She was going to be,
Yeah.
it was rather sad. And anyway, she came in, and I loved it. At the very beginning of the film, she's in a coach, and they drive her into New York, and then they arrive at this theatre, and it says puppet show, and she went puppet show, and all she wanted to do is buy a piece of pizza, which is all part of the plot for later on in the film.
Yeah.
But anyway, she sees the show, and there's this sort of funny. It's like I'm this old boy, and I walk in with this puppet, and I do an act, and he's got there down below. You can't really see, but if I turn over, there he is. There's a balloon there.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
him in close up. That's us rehearsing, and there was a rubber tube that went up, and I put it in my mouth, and I made the puppet put the balloon to his face, and the balloon got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then he floated up in the air. It was rather lovely, actually.
Yeah.
Lovely. They composed this super music for it, and he floated around the stage. And sadly, the balloon pops, and he falls down onto the stage, and he looks up at me. I had a chin string, extra string, and I went like that. And then they cut to the main artist, and she leaves the theatre, and they carry on with the film. So it was only a short piece, but it was lovely, lovely to do. And I was again picked up very early in the morning. We filmed it in Clapham Junction. It was the Grand Theatre, and
Oh,
they
cool.
use it for music venues now. I mean, music venue mostly,
Yeah.
but they made it into this whole thing. They brought loads of people in to watch the filming, and so I think that's my latest film up to date. That was a couple of years ago, or yeah, it must be 2 years ago now. 2 years this year, and then I've got a nice picture. It's nothing to do with really filming, but I suppose it is a little bit. But might not be able to see all that. But that was a Comic Con for Labyrinth. We had a
Oh,
Labyrinth convention last summer, and we brought Brian Henson, who's there. That's lovely. Louise Gold, Dave Goltz, Kevin Clash, Todd, and I forgot what I call him Toddy, and I can't remember. That's Wendy Froud, Brian Froud. Oh, and I think that one is Toby Froud now. And
oh,
then there was me with my Zippy pullover, and
oh,
that's
yeah.
Nigel Plaskett who did Pipkins, and we both were in Labyrinth, and we were invited to be part of the main group, which was lovely. And they took this picture of us, which is very nice. There is a video out on YouTube now. I think it's only come out this week. I think it's the, what do they call it? Is it the London Comic Con or something? And it's about the labyrinth, and it's a film they made of the labyrinth. And there's little clips of us waving
Oh,
and me
wow.
doing the hands thing. In labyrinth, it was the hands
Oh,
bit.
was on the
So I was
doors and
teaching.
like, which
Yeah,
way do you want to go?
exactly all
Yeah.
that bit. So, but that is as far as I can talk about films at the moment. So I hope that's
That's
given you an
perfect.
insight.
Perfect. I'm sure the audience will love a bit of insight on all the films you've just racked through. We'll be talking about more movies in the future, more if Ronnie has any more behind the scenes conversations, the people he's worked with. Obviously, he's touched upon like David Bowie and Tom
Oh yeah.
Hanks and those people. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed this episode. Thank you, Ronnie, again for your insight on the films you've been in. And yeah, we'll see you in episode three coming very soon. Take care. I've been
Thank
Adam and my co-host Ronnie.
yeah. Thank you, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.